Vishayebhya paravartya Sthapanam svasvagolake Ubhayeshamindriyanam Sadhama parikirtitaha Bahyana lambanam vridder Esho Uparati Vishayebhyaha, from the objects, paravartya, having turned back, sthapanam, placing them, svasvagolake, in their respective centers of activity, ubhayesham, the two kinds of indriyanam, sense organs, saha, that, damaha, self-control, parikirtitaha, is declared, bahyanalambanam, freedom from influence of external objects, vritehe, of the thought waves, eshaha, this, uparatihi, self-withdrawal, uttama, the best. Turning both kinds of sense organs away from sense objects and placing them in their respective centers of activity is called Dama, or self-control. The best Uparati, or self-withdrawal, consists in the thought waves ceasing to act from the influence of external objects.
Namaste. So both kinds of sense organs, the knowledge-acquiring senses like the eyes and ears, and the active senses like speech, arms, legs, etc., should be turned away from their objects, turned inward, and brought into their centers of manifestation. Now, you've all seen this chart a million times, but it refers to the senses and the chakras. The senses being the organs and the chakras being their centers of control and awareness. So the senses should be brought back into their chakras, into the appropriate centers. What is this? In yoga, it's called pratyahara, withdrawal of the senses. Here it's called Dama, but it means the same thing. That the senses should not be allowed to contact with their objects. Why? Because then one will become identified with the senses and the objects and lose the focus on the self. So, for meditation, the senses must be withdrawn. They can't be allowed to interact with the objects. And similarly, the mind. That Uparati, or self-withdrawal, means to center the mind in its own space and not allow it to come under the influence of external objects. Why is that? Because we want to direct the mind towards Brahman and not let it get entangled with the external objects, the objects of the senses, or even its own thoughts. But rather, it should remain tucked in, controlled by the intelligence. The Kathopanishad has a nice simile. Know the self to be the owner of the chariot. The body is the chariot. Buddhi, intelligence, is the charioteer. And the mind is the reins. The senses are the horses. And the sense objects are the roads. So in other words, get your chariot off the road, park it in the garage, put up the horses, send the charioteer home for the day, and maybe you have some chance to cognize Brahman. Otherwise, the senses and mind are going to be completely distracted by all these different objects coming within their range. And the only thing we can do then is contemplate the objects of the senses. which of course leads to identification with them, desire for them, and subsequent frustration and fall down. Because the sense and sense objects are never perfect. This is the state in the material world, that everything is unsatisfactory. The opposite of the old Disney song, everything is unsatisfactorious. Because, why? We are not meant to enjoy this trivia, these silly sense objects. They are just like, not the road, but they're like a dug up road under construction. Everything is an obstacle. Because the mind cannot be calm, shama, when it is engaged with the sense objects, because the sense objects are constantly changing. So in that case, which is the way it always is in the world, isn't it? You just get used to things being the way they are, and then boom, they change. This is the nature of the material world. So what does not change is consciousness, the self, and this nature of the world being unsatisfactory. Maybe you're having a run of good luck. Maybe things are going your way. Maybe you think you can enjoy here. Maybe you think you can stay here comfortably forever. But no, it's not going to last. Even you may be in a good financial or career situation, in a safe country, or in a good family that has some traditions and so on. But something's going to change. It can't last forever. I remember just before the COVID crisis, I was staying in a small hotel in a beach town in South Sri Lanka. And I noticed the guy had built recently a number of very nice apartments. And I said, well, how did you get the money to build those apartments? And he said, oh, I mortgaged my family home. And I told him, you might think that things are going well and they're going to go that way always. But we've had a stretch here now. I mean, this was at the peak of the Sri Lanka tourist trade. People were coming from all over and there was not enough capacity for them. So this fellow mortgaged his family home to build an expensive apartment building for tourists. And guess what happened the next year? COVID. Tourism stopped. Cold. Travel restrictions. Nobody was allowed to leave. Even the foreigners who were here couldn't leave. I got stuck in India for like a year and a half. I couldn't leave. That was okay because I was in a good place. But a lot of people were totally inconvenienced. And this fellow, I'm sure, he got underwater on his loan. Well, of course, the banks made some concessions to people who were behind in their payments. I know one hotel owner down the street here who got I think 1 year delay on his payments because of COVID. But he had to go through a whole bunch of bureaucratic nonsense to get it. So see, this is the problem in the material world. Things always change. It may be good now, but it's not going to last forever. You have to be prepared for those times. And the best way to be prepared is to meditate now. Go within. Bring the senses inside their orbs, their chakras. Bring the mind under the control of the intelligence. Don't let it wander around. The mind is the reins, the means of controlling the senses by the mind. So the mind should be controlled, and then the senses will automatically be controlled. How? By intelligence, by hearing the words of the scriptures and the guru and acting accordingly, in harmony with them, not struggling against them or criticizing them or making excuses why you can't or something like that. That's childish. You will miss the benefit of your connection with the scriptures and the guru if you don't fall into harmony with them. You should surrender. You should follow these instructions. Then whatever happens, up to and including death, cannot disturb you from the path.
Om Tat Sat, Om Shakti Om.